Australian friend broadcast in Boston, United States of America. I've joined the people whose community I've been reaching out to for so long because I've been broadcasting about American politics now for 3 years, and I'm looking at ways to diversify, build, do whatever, but strengthen the voice of people who are campaigning against fascism. Because even though the fascist in chief is out of office, there's still a very lying, self-delusional, self-deluding Republican leaders and just Trump loyalists, Republican voters, Democrats who I better do something on the other side of the fence. In case anyone's there saying hello, people probably aren't expecting me at this time of day. I think I worked out at the moment that it's going to be best for me to broadcast when my family is just getting up so early in the morning. So that's going to be a bit of a change for this broadcast. I hope we still manage to make it work for our regulars and keep working on that going forwards. So to start with, I've used the hashtag Michael Steele and lying Republican liars who lie, something like that, because it's really important to call out the bigger picture of what's happening, the degree to which Republicans and their media cronies are responsible for a resurgence in COVID. And I want to find a way to harness that mama energy of frustration amongst responsible, conscientious parents who vaccinate, who do whatever they can to protect their children and, more broadly speaking, their communities, their states, their nation, and indeed humanity from avoiding falling prey to the ubiquitous reach of propagandists on the internet who are working for clout, for self-aggrandizement, who are working in some cases for Vladimir Putin, who are working for white Christian extremists who are hoping to destabilize America and purely to create an appetite for voting for Republican politicians who position themselves as being anti-establishment people who, if everybody's corrupt, you might as well vote for them because at least then you get to hate on modernity. At least you get to be anti the popular thrust of the time, which tends to be towards more inclusive, more functional, multi-plural democracy, more diversity of skin color and diversity of gender expression and sexual preferences, that type of thing, as well as being fundamentally more pro-family, because families are better off when society is less feudally organized or less organized along feudal lines. And poverty becomes more entrenched among the hands of a few, amongst others, because tertiary education becomes more inaccessible, college becomes more out of reach, because people don't even have the time, the disposable income, the leisure, or the energy to pursue upskilling avenues that would enrich their lives and their families' lives, because it's harder and harder to keep your head above water. So under the Biden administration, the greatest Hi, Dav. Hope you guys are settling in nicely. Pilot says, hi, am I a Red Sox gal now? No, I am not a sports person. I am not a sports person. I'm a big believer in physical fitness, even if I don't do it. My knees are still complaining from my son encouraging me to walk up a lot of flights of stairs the other day for fun, which we did. We walked down, up and down, over 12 flights of stairs. And Yeah, I need to be fitter. So I'll grant you that. But as for Red Sox people, they weren't wearing masks. They were all in a shopping center on, and there were all these. My children had masks with no masks who sat to this indoor venue, and I felt like almost running away in terror, because in Boston there is now a substantial degree of COVID transmission, and indoor mask wearing is strongly advised. Craig is here and says, hello, Dav. Hello, Craig. I'm going to look at a thread from a physician soon who said this tying high COVID-related pneumonia and also other viruses that are opportunistically taking over the bodies of, not taking over, opportunistically infecting people whose immune systems are already struggling to cope with COVID. So there's a resurgence of a lot of harmful things happening to children in areas of high COVID infection. So when women realize the extent to which this is happening, and because exponential growth is something that happens pretty quickly, and especially with Delta, which is so much more infectious and transmissible than the original wild variant of COVID, that we have to make sure people are getting this message and understanding it. We're not complaining about the Biden administration. We're complaining about the united forces of malignant disinformation. And women have to start speaking out about it, because it is our children, too young to be vaccinated yet children, who are going to be at risk in what's going to be presumably a hard, difficult winter with no pediatric ICU beds available. So even if your child has an injury that's not COVID related, you get intensive care. And this is the kind of danger propagandists are putting in. So I'm here to be part of that voice that's speaking out. Trump lied and people died. Yes, it's catchy and it's a continuance. Trump lied and helped galvanize the electorate around a false position, helped galvanize Trump's sympathetic section of the electorate around the false premise that COVID wasn't a big deal, and that visible signs of a pandemic, such as a mask wearing, were clearly unsatisfactory. It shouldn't be one. He said, he objects to masks because waiters might touch their face and then touch things. Not an argument against the efficacy of relation to reducing viral transmission within a framing of a Swiss cheese. Things got holes in it, but you stack up multiple levels of cheese at a personal and a societal, and you risk vital responsibility holes. As people continue to die, and there's going to be a massive escalation in suffering, because even when harsh suffering, when people keep posting those Darwin cartoons saying, I've got this, like stupid people will die, those people susceptible to disinformation have children, have dependents, and the sum of human misery that is currently being spurred on, being trying to oust the Biden to try and administration to oust Democrats from their congressional positions using the twin prongs of extreme gerrymandering. And so it was intimidating to migrate a lot of people not fill out the census, and therefore skewing maps, district maps, even more to favor, because of immigrants, Democrat, who might vote, not even recorded as living in certain areas. That's going to help those type of voter suppression efforts in some, and what else is going to happen. Oh, and then direct the economy so that then reflexively vote out whoever's in power. taking advantage in many cases is reflexively deferential to Republicans and giving liars an advantage because they'll continue to try to burnish their own claims to being impartial by presenting two arguments as if they're equally valid, when Republicans have crashed and burned through their credibility and should not be afforded an equal presentation. Their arguments should not be with a straight face when they have contradicted themselves publicly and previously. So Elise Stefanik, a Republican representative who has previously denounced Trump as being dangerous and bad for the American people, she should not be able to go to the media and say, I totally endorse Trump. He's wonderful. There's nothing wrong with him. And in fact, Nancy Pelosi is the enemy of the people. She should not be allowed to say that without a journalist zooming out into a bigger picture and saying, but previously you said that Trump was dangerous. So yes, let's hear a very active denunciation of one particular lying Republican, Jim Jordan, by a former chair of the RNC, Michael Steele. This is only 50 seconds long. I haven't heard it myself, but I'm going to play it for us now. Take myself out of the picture, and I just hope that the internet connectivity levels hold up. Oh, and I got a haircut. That's news. That's news for my regular listeners.
I can tell you the day of everything. I can tell you where I was. I can tell you what was said. This son of a bitch is sitting up there acting like, well, I don't know if it was before. I don't know if it was after. Right. Oh, Lord and Jesus, I don't remember. I got to look at my notes. You know, bitch, what time you called the president, and you know what you said.
Oh, my God. Yes.
Grown ass man. Act like just so got time.
So that was some language, and I'm sure there's an appetite for that language. I'm going to just quickly read out something from Steve. He's a former consultant, so used to have a degree of political potency, still commands, I imagine, a large salary as a member of the Lincoln Project, because they get a lot of money from liberals who intuitively feel that an outlier group, such as former Republicans, that they will know the language to speak to reach out to on the fence Republican voters. Now, I've heard people say there's no evidence, but it's not easy to prove what happened inside people's hearts and minds. And certainly there was a movement away from Trump amongst educated white people that was critical to Biden's victory. I mean, people say, hey, look, more Republicans voted for Trump in 2020 than 2016, but he won. He made a great deal of penetration into conservative-leaning people in Hispanic communities of all different permutations, Cuban Hispanics in Miami or in Florida, South American Hispanic people, and Colombian Spanish people. There was a lot, and I imagine that it relates to a degree of susceptibility to Trump's claims that he was able to quash COVID and not have any lockdown. COVID wasn't a problem, and that people hitched their voting votes to his wagon. What do you hitch to a wagon? They hitched their horses to his wagon. They hitched their voting horses to his wagon because he promised the world, something that's very common to con artist, fascist leaders. They make a lot of promises, and they weaponize people's emotions of fear and hate and glee and happiness. They unite people around patriotism, claims of patriotism. They fill the gap between people's understanding of reality and reality. So people who want power, who are afraid of modernity, dissolving the family, people who are afraid that an increasing acceptance of homosexuality and transgender expression will undermine all of the unspoken contracts that we have in our relationships with each other that produce children, and that people have with their religion, that their religion helps keep people in their functional roles of owing things to each other, that men owe women and women owe men, and that you have a family unit and Jesus blesses it, and that's how you stay together within the imaginary bonds of that social fabric. Some people believe that their religion helps keep society together, helps keep families together. And the thrust of modernity is towards secularism, where religion exercises less of a potent influence, where religion can't dictate gender roles as easily. People are questioning those gender roles. People are experimenting and playing with those gender roles. And there's a lot of change. So people who are aversive to change attempted to believe Trump, to give Trump credibility, which is very dangerous because he is a very self-serving, malevolent criminal person who threw America under the bus with relation to COVID, because COVID wasn't a made-up problem. It was very real. It needed very sincere and concerted attention and effort on the part of a president. Americans didn't get that. And the more educated you are, the more likely you are to believe that, unless you have a countervailing influence of wanting to make money from Republican tax cuts. So those two conflicting interests were wrestling with each other amongst educated voters. Enough educated voters realized how much harm Trump was doing to America, and they voted out that unstable, self-serving criminal who would have started a war with Iran, abused the Justice Department to try to challenge election results so that his Republican co-conspirators could help throw out the election results, and shred the contract that everybody has under American democracy for a shared distribution of power, and just thrown that out and allowed himself to be the beneficiary of a coup, of a slow rolling coup. So for a short broadcast today, I hope you enjoyed it. I'm going to maybe do some stand-up comedy in Boston and maybe start an Instagram account so that I can find more avenues to diversify this message and help strengthen it and help conscript more people to the cause of speaking out forcefully against what's happening, that Fox is still spreading propaganda. I don't want to be someone who just complains. I want to be someone who helps initiate positive pro-social activity as an effective countermeasure to the nihilistic and destructive forces of autocratic leaning republicanism and Trumpublicanism. I want to do all those things. So if you're on board, say hi on Twitter or wherever it is that you found me. And you could even join my merry group of patrons if you like. I should do something special for them. There's some people who've supported me for a long time. So I'm sorry I didn't broadcast for 2 days. I'll try and get more regular. We've just been settling into Boston. So thanks for any indulgence on the part of people who have supported me for so long. I'm very grateful. I appreciate that investment in me, not just in a financial sense, but in an emotional sense. You took a leap of faith on an Australian. Perry Pilot says plenty of material for lots of Trump jokes. Yeah, I'd like to make it broader because I want to pay out the people who are very visibly doing damage as part of the Trump legacy right now. So we'll see how I go with that. Thank you so much to the people who listened today. Take care, all the best, and keep up the good fight. Keep up the good fight. Good trouble, necessary trouble. Bye. And broadcast.